Durant. Irving. Oh, no.
Kyrie Irving is one of the most popular point guards in the NBA, and this is one of the biggest years of his career. It's the first year, after all, that Irving is playing with fellow superstar Kevin Durant and James Harden in Brooklyn. But why was Kyrie fired by the NBA big time this season? In this video, we're going to dive into the answer to that question. Kyrie Irving's biggest season yet. This might be the biggest season yet for Kyrie Irving. Now, you might be thinking that this would have come much earlier in his career. Kyrie has actually won a ring before with the Cavs, and even before that, he came into the league with pressure on his shoulders as the top draft pick for Cleveland in the years following LeBron James leaving. He's long been expected to play like a team leader, and this will be nothing new for him. However, this might be the best situation Kyrie's been in during his entire career. He was part of a big three before, with him and LeBron and Kevin Love with the Cavs. But that was more centered around LeBron himself, and Kyrie just never quite stepped out of that shadow. The Cavs couldn't find playoff success or even make it into the playoffs with just Kyrie and not the two other members of the dynamic duo. And being in the shadow of LeBron James is believed to be one of the reasons Kyrie pushed to get out of Cleveland. This time, there is a big three around Irving, and he's at the center of it, as an improved player since his days in Cleveland. And while Kyrie once again has a chance to win a ring, this time will come without the strings attached of being on a team that many believe was carried by LeBron, especially given the way that LeBron powered the Cavs' comeback against the Warriors after they fell into the series by a large margin. This season is also bigger than Kyrie's first in Brooklyn because it comes with new teammates. While Kevin Durant's move to the Nets did happen earlier this year, Durant ended up missing the season with injury and is only just getting back on the court to give us the first chance to see the big star from the Nets playing together. And James Harden only recently arrived in a trade from the Houston Rockets to be able to give the Nets the edge that they need to win now. There is a lot of pressure in being the starting point guard on a team like this for, well, really any player, but this will especially be a big season for Kyrie, who does have the chance to prove that he can be a big leader on a team with other superstars and not just get overshadowed by LeBron. And after his failure to be able to make a splash in Boston, there's another reason for him to have a chip on his shoulder too. But everything hasn't been smooth sailing for Kyrie or the Nets in general this season, even though they are one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. The earlier part of the season has been turbulent for Kyrie in specific, and the point guard ended up being fined by the league, getting the big fine. Kyrie has to pay a fine of $50,000 this season, and while that might not be a lot compared to the millions of dollars that many players make every year, it's still relatively large for a single fine. But what did the Nets point guard do exactly to have to pick up a fine like this? Well, turns out that the answer has to do a lot with the league's health and safety protocols. The fine happened because Kyrie was seen at an indoor gathering with more than 15 people, which is forbidden by the league's current rules. Irving was also made to quarantine because of this and ended up missing out on the salary from the games that he missed while in quarantine, which all in all ended up causing him to lose a much higher amount, $870,000 to be exact. That massive amount of salary came from the loss of only missing 2 games, which just so happened to be the mandatory 5-day quarantine that Irving was forced to undergo due to violating the policies. However, head coach Steve Nash did come out and say that Irving is still a brilliant player in his eyes, and that he doesn't see any problems coming from his missed time this season. The quarantine, though, isn't the only reason why Irving missed games so far this season. This has also appeared to be a turbulent year for Kyrie personally, which has led him missing some time on the court with the NBA team, missing several games. Even before being hit with a mandatory quarantine that made him miss 2 games, Kyrie also missed a number of games earlier in the month, and all in all, missed 7 straight before getting back into action with the Nets. In fact, it was during this absence from the team for personal reasons that the NBA actually investigated Kyrie and handed out the quarantine, along with the fine for violating the league's health and safety protocols. Kyrie hasn't stated the exact reason why he ended up missing these games, which led him to being spotted at large gatherings, as well as his following quarantine. The only reason that he gave was that he was, quote, out for family and personal stuff. And when he was asked about whether he knew that he was violating the health and safety policies, he simply stated that it was, quote, time to move on. He did promise that he was going to be back in the game, however, and said as much after returning to the team following his absence. Quote, I'm back, I'm happy to be back, Kyrie said at the time. time, quote, "We got some great pieces and we moved on, and I let my actions as well as my game speak for myself like I plan on doing. I just need a pause." Head coach Steve Nash has been positive on Kyrie the whole time, and really doesn't believe the leave of absence from the team is going to end up having an effect on his performance with the team as a whole. And that's not the surprising outcome. One of the main challenges of being a head coach on a team like the Nets right now is attempting to manage egos and star players, as well as keeping them happy. And in the case of Kyrie, it's better to just let him miss a couple of games without making a big deal out of it, instead of turning it into a problem and ending up with an unhappy star player on the hands. New chemistry and position change. Another one of the biggest challenges for the Nets is building chemistry on the player side, with both Kevin Durant joining the lineup and James Harden arriving on the roster after a trade with the Rockets. We've seen multiple times where teams were not able to win big in the past due to chemistry concerns, and the Nets are especially at risk of ending up as one of those teams. All of their current superstar players, after all, have had one kind of chemistry problem or another over the course of their careers. One important area is the addition of James Harden and how the rest of the team adapts to it. Harden is coming off of an exit from Houston that wasn't on the best of terms, with his attitude leading to the team blowing up their dynamic duo of him and Russell Westbrook earlier when they ended up trading Westbrook to the Wizards. The situation in Houston didn't improve in the eyes of Harden, and he continued to push for a trade until he ended up on the Nets and left the Rockets on a rebuilding state. Obviously, Harden comes with a lot of talent, but also a lot of potential difficulties. Whether Harden is going to be able to get along with Kyrie, who also plays at the guard position, has been a point of discussion following the trade. So far, though, it does look like things are going to go well in that area, and it looks like there might even be some competition between the two players thanks to their somewhat similar roles on the court, but it appears that they have figured it out. According to what Irving had said after a win against the Golden State Warriors, he talked to Harden and simply said that Harden is the point guard in the talented lineup. Quote, "I just looked at him and I said, you're the point guard and I'm going to play shooting guard. It was as simple as that." He also said that he and Harden came to an agreement 4 days before that win. Kyrie has, of course, spent most of his career playing point guard. It's the position that he was drafted to play coming out of college, and it's also the position that he was playing when the Cavaliers won the title and with him in the lineup. It's going to be a change for him to be featured as a shooting guard, but that might just be a change for the better. His skill set has always featured scoring as a major feature, and playing shooting guard is going to allow him to focus on that more instead of passing the ball and setting up teammates with chances. Kyrie's points per game have risen after arriving in Brooklyn, as the Nets have relied on him more as a scorer compared to his previous teams Cleveland and Boston, who expected him to be more of a playmaker than he is now. He's been averaging around 27 points per game since arriving in Brooklyn, and that number might only go up further with him acting as a shooting guard and Harden being the main playmaker on the team. According to Kyrie, having Harden around has only made his job easier and has allowed him to go out freely and make plays. That will likely be a sigh of relief for head coach Steve Nash, who seems to have dodged a bullet when it came to some of the chemistry problems that would have otherwise come from placing several stars in the same roster in such a short period of time, especially with two of these stars being guards that have experience playing the point guard position. Things have gone well for the Nets so far when it does come to getting results out of the trio of players, but they still have some work to do with this season, and they aren't at the top of the Eastern Conference yet, despite being predicted to win it, along with the fact that there is going to be tremendous pressure on both the Nets as a whole and Kyrie Irving individually to not underperform and to prove why the Nets were predicted as the winner of the East Coast Conference long before the Harden trade.